Big things have small beginnings. Learn to play the great game. Written by Wes Berry. Narrated by Thomas Miller. Dedication. This book is dedicated to my wife, me, and our 4 sons, Aaron, Brandon, Bradley, and Wes. Okay, I'm not the easiest person to live with, and they've endured an awful lot over the years. To my sons, I'd like to publicly apologize for that incident with the elephant. And to my wife, I apologize for the times I went sailing. Also, to you, the listener, I dedicate this book in the hope that you will take some bits of knowledge from these pages, even if only in the validation of what you may already know. Get in the great game and you'll enjoy the ride of your life. Honestly, it's an amazing game that will make your life worthwhile. And finally, to Commander Duncan, U.S. Navy Reserve, who excited my interest in strategic thinking. Signed, Wes. Introduction. I chose the title Big Things Have Small Beginnings for this book because I know that I'm living proof of that very truth. But I've found that I was never alone in that. In fact, just about every successful person I've met, and I've been privileged to have met quite a few, and every successful leader I've studied, has in some way or another borne out the same truth. That is, successful people seem to spend a lot more time and energy on small things that unsuccessful people so often seem to neglect. Did you ever hear the story about the blacksmith who brought down a kingdom? Seems he was being a little careless one day, and so he missed one of the nails in a single horseshoe. Just a little thing, right? Well, as the story goes, it seems that horseshoe soon worked itself loose on a single hard ride, and the poor horse stumbled and fell. He threw his rider, who was injured badly enough that he wasn't able to complete his journey. Unfortunately, that meant that the message the rider was carrying never got through to the general for whom it was intended. Had the general received the message in time, he would have waited just that one more day to attack. That is, until the large band of reinforcements could arrive. He didn't know. So he did attack as well as he was able. He felt that he had no choice, and sad to say, he was resoundingly defeated. But worse, he was the last and best defense of the king. And so the king, and of course the kingdom, was lost. Man, if only that blacksmith had paid a little more attention to that seemingly minor detail. And that's pretty much what this book is about. I'm here to tell you that when you take care of the little stuff, the big stuff has a real nice way of taking care of itself. And what I hope to accomplish in these few pages is to help you take better care of all that little stuff. I've enjoyed a wonderful measure of success, both in my business and in my life, and I sincerely want the same for you. But it certainly wasn't always an easy road to travel. My hope is that if you too are starting out on that road, or maybe are already well along the way and perhaps have hit a couple of ruts, then what I'm about to tell you might be of assistance to you on your own journey, in your business and in your life. Life is so doggone short, and it's so doggone precious when we're able to live it at a high level, a life of success, a life that's full of the deep joy that comes with working toward and accomplishing very worthwhile goals that make our lives and the lives of those all around us just a little bit better for our being here. It doesn't get any better than that. As far as I can see, if you learn to play in the great game of business, you will also be learning how to play in the great game of life. I can't thank you enough for picking up this book. You're the kind of person who makes this country and this world a much better place for the ambition you've already shown. I'm pulling for you. I really am. How I wish we had many more like you. So, how about we get started? Part 1. Examining the Playing Field. Here's a quote from John D. Rockefeller. "The person who starts out simply with the idea of getting rich won't succeed. You must have a larger ambition. There's no mystery in business success. If you do each day's task successfully and stay faithfully within these natural operations of commercial laws which I talk so much about, and keep your head clear, you will come out all right." Chapter 1. Ambition, for better or worse. Let's begin our discussion with ambition. Nothing in business will get accomplished without it. You simply can't play in the great game without ambition. Ambition is an absolute essential. But make no mistake, for better or worse, genuine ambition involves struggle. We set out to achieve something that we believe is really worthwhile, and it is the achievement of that worthwhile goal that brings us a genuine sense of our own worth. We make a difference. We earn our dignity. But let me add that the very struggle itself, even in the absence of the success we set out to achieve, brings much of the same benefit to us. It makes us people with a purpose. Ambition also puts considerable demands on us. It requires a whole lot more of us than just our lofty ambitions, our dreams in life. It requires a toughness of mind and spirit that only really grows in us once we enter the ring, once we begin to play in the great game. And success is guaranteed to no one. But if you're not willing to lose, you shouldn't be playing the game. What is ambition? For most people, the term is a little ambiguous, isn't it? You're sitting at your desk shooting the breeze over morning coffee with a coworker, and your department head walks by. "She's ambitious," you say. Is that a compliment, or is it castigation? The answer to that question depends largely on whether or not you consider yourself to be ambitious, and for what reason, that is, to what end. And be assured that this discussion is not a new one. 17th century philosopher, statesman, and jurist Sir Francis Bacon pondered this same point in his essay on ambition published in 1612. In his now archaic English, he writes, "So ambitious men, if they find the way open for their rising and still get forward, they are rather busy than dangerous. But if they be checked in their desires, they become secretly discontent, and look upon men and matters with an evil eye, and are best pleased when things go backward, which is the worst property in a servant of a prince or state." Well, isn't that clear as a bell? But, in fact, it sure does ring true. He's saying that when ambitious men are allowed to engage in their passion, they become marvelously busy and industrious. They get stuff done. Contrary to common suspicion, he says, they do not become dangerous. On the contrary, he adds, the danger of ambition usually arises when such men are denied the pursuit of their ambitions, and then become a veritable danger to society, primarily out of the frustration and the consequent bitterness that follows. Rather than steering their formidable energies toward the good of society, they instead channel them toward its damage and destruction. This, of course, is particularly onerous when such frustrated men are servants of a prince or of a state. Cautiously, Bacon instructs princes to manage ambitious people and channel their activities such that their creativity and ambitions are given breath, if not even wings. Quoting again, "Therefore, it is good for princes, if they use ambitious men, to handle it so as they be still progressive and not retrograde, which, because it cannot be without inconvenience, it is good not to use such natures at all." In the plain English of today, he's suggesting that if ambitious and therefore productive people cannot have their ambitions nurtured by the activities for which they have been enlisted, then it would be much better never to have enlisted such people at all, so that their frustrated ambition doesn't end up frustrating the success of a venture. More than a few business writers have drawn parallels between the characteristics required for success in business with those required for success in war. With certain obvious limitations, it makes sense. The challenge, in both war and in business, of pitting oneself against fierce competitors merely scratches the surface. Bacon addresses this as well, but points out that an overly ambitious man may crave the accolades of greatness more than the doing of the great thing for the right reasons. He might report success where none existed solely for his own advancement. An overly ambitious military officer might look forward to chaos. Chaos might well be his opportunity for advancement. He would crave the opportunities that battle presents. He might even wager selfishly with the lives under his command. And then, if his misguided ambition really grabs a hold of him to where he starts to lose control, being acutely aware of the opportunity that chaos could bring, such a man might go so far as to create the chaos himself, regardless of the wisdom of his battlefield decisions, and particularly regardless of the sacrifice of the lives of his soldiers. As his opportunity lies in chaos, he could look to create such an environment for his own advantage. And ambitious people know well the maxim, the greater the risk, the greater the rewards. If successful, therefore, making risky wagers might seem the thing to do. Taken to the extreme, advancement by assassination might even be within the character of this type of individual. Talk about ambition gone awry, right? There's little doubt but that an openly ambitious man in the military is a recipe for disaster. As such, these very ambitions will block the achievements that an ambitious man strives for. Is it any wonder that highly ambitious individuals are almost chronically beset with dissatisfaction? In a military structure, this trait could lead to real complications. Balance. The trick is to have just the right amount of ambition. This quote-unquote Goldilocks zone of ambition is ideal for a military career. Too little ambition and nothing gets done. Too much and you are constantly discontent, leading to unwise or dangerous actions that could prove disastrous. Just the right measure of modest ambition and you've got the perfect recipe for a truly effective and trusted officer. The great Chinese general and war strategist Sun Tzu, victorious in battle after battle back in the 6th century BC, elaborated on this quandary with his The Art of War, certainly one of the best books ever written. Even today it is studied in virtually all military academies. And now the business world has grown well aware of the application of Sun Tzu's war principles and practices to the current art of business. As the great general says, in the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. And yet, while Sun Tzu recognized the impact of this principle, he also clearly cautioned military leaders to maintain a discerning eye over an overly ambitious man, one who could abuse a chaotic condition to advance his personal glory rather than for true battlefield success. I've got to agree with Sun Tzu. It is entirely true that some are simply too ambitious to serve in the military. I'd rather say that some are not meant for a peacetime military, although I would prefer to say that some have an affinity for audacity, a willingness to take surprisingly bold risks. In the words of Frederick the Great, l'audace, toujours l'audace, or as translated and re-quoted by World War II's outstandingly successful war leader General George Patton, audacity, audacity, always audacity. Let's face it, ambition is a powerful sword, and appreciably so when it's wielded by a person of integrity. When it is associated with a few individuals who are unafraid to openly strive for success, the results can be substantial. Timing. There's one key factor which may be largely out of your hands, and that is timing. Perhaps it is all about timing, when you are born and when you come of age. If the skills and traits you possess are in need, and your course is set to take the greatest advantage, then you can achieve what you were born to be. Don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about little things here. If you believe you are meant for greatness, and you refuse to let failures distract you, then you can achieve great things. And these great things will advance not only yourself, but those around you. In fact, with an additional touch of good fortune, you may well end up advancing society or mankind itself, primarily as a result of your intrepid audacity. When an outlier happens to possess the physical and mental strengths required, and has the audacity to act boldly with his or her ambitions, in the right place at the right time, well, this is the making of a Caesar. And it was owing to the ambition of a Caesar that the greatness of Rome was born. Julius Caesar. Greatness? You bet. It was none other than Julius Caesar, 100 to 44 B.C., and his immediate successors, Augustus, 63 B.C. to 14 A.D., and Tiberius, 42 B.C. to 37 A.D., who converted the early Republic of Rome into the mighty Roman Empire, ushering in the Pax Romana, Latin for Roman peace, a period of relative peace and prosperity that lasted throughout the known world of that time for over 200 years. To date, this is the longest period of widespread general peace the world has ever known. Look at the words spoken by Shakespeare's Mark Antony, 83 to 30 B.C., a Roman general and statesman who also played a significant role in the birth of the empire. Words chosen partly to eulogize his admired friend Julius Caesar, following Caesar's assassination by another once close associate, Brutus. The noble Brutus hath told you Caesar was ambitious. If it were so, it was a grievous fault, and grievously hath Caesar answered it. Come I to speak at Caesar's funeral. He was my friend, faithful and just to me. But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. Yes, Caesar was ambitious for himself, but also for his friends and for Rome. You might ask how this can be, for ambition is thought of as greed. I tell you, ambition, greed, and all the baser forms, thought of as the darker side of human nature, are simply tools. Like a gun. In the hands of a criminal, a gun affects society with pain. But that same gun in the hands of the hero protects the innocent and enforces the security that society requires to conduct the gentrification of its citizens. Caesar's identity was Rome, and so his ambition was for Rome. What greater gift than audacious ambition for the citizens of Rome? And even in death did his efforts continue to work to unify Rome. To be sure, his legacy took about 80 years to usher in the Pax Romana, but many have argued persuasively that it was, in fact, Julius Caesar's death that began the long-term unification of Rome. Granted, much blood was spilled for Rome to be Rome, and true, justice, and security were reserved mostly for those who were Roman citizens. Still, in the provinces, it was better than it had been. The fall of Rome just before 400 A.D. began the onset of the Dark Ages, and the consequent loss of the amazing peace, stability, and protection of its citizenry that were such hallmarks of the empire. The eventual downfall of the Roman Empire was clearly a great loss to all mankind, and it would be another 500 to 1,000 years before the Dark Ages would finally come to a close, and the world could again pick itself up and begin to shine a little brighter light on itself. So, was Caesar an ambitious man? I'm sure he was. It's certainly fair to say that Caesar played at the very top of the great game, and all mankind should thank him for his ambition. He had the audacity to be ambitious, and the mindfulness to use these traits to impose his willfulness to unite his countrymen. Was he perfect? Hardly. But even with all his faults, and all of Rome's faults and limitations, the ambition and greed of Rome evolved into the audacity to force the peace. Yes, the desire of greed enforced the peace. How, you might ask, can this be? Simple. Peace was the ambition of Caesar, and it was the ultimate ambition of Rome. Because with security comes prosperity, and the greed of Rome created prosperity. Sure, it was imperfect, as all institutions made by man inevitably are plagued with imperfections. However, with Rome, life was grander and better than what the world was without it. Rome changed the world from one of relentless tribal barbarism to one of organized cooperative civilization. The societal revolution it ushered in, made possible by the force of the Pax Romana, brought advancements to the civilization of humankind that are practicably impossible to sketch out in full. Keep in mind, the goal of every military commander is victory, and with victory there is peace. So, in, quote, understanding ambitious people, it is important to consider the necessary circumstances of the times in which you deal. But, as we've said, ambition is a powerful force. Therefore, in the absence of the engagement of war, it is clear that soldiers, those ambitious souls biting at the bit for action, must be kept busy, even when little of crucial importance is to be done. In days of old, the army, in times of peace, would often be put to building roads, bridges, and other such useful tasks. Okay, not bad. Not war, to be sure, but a pretty useful and practical means to occupy those ambitious soldiers in a constructive pursuit. Need we look very far to see the effects of our not heeding these principles today? How about all those dedicated, self-sacrificing, ambitious for peace and freedom soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan who fought beside our own American troops to secure some measure of peace, tranquility, and future prosperity for their own families and countrymen following the close of the Iraq War? We were able to work with a lot of these former soldiers to help them work with us to improve their country, from infrastructure repairs and improvements to governing. But we simply couldn't work with all of them. Those who had to be overlooked became just what we're talking about here. Ambitious men who, in defeat, were left without a means to fulfill their ambitions. These soldiers, trained in the arts of war, were left without a feeling of usefulness. Is it any wonder so many ended up becoming part of an insurgent force? Is it any wonder that they took out their frustrations using the skills they had acquired? Is it really any wonder they set about inflicting so much disruption to what should have been a lasting peace? Perhaps the peace could have been maintained However, if these men could have had their ambition channeled into tasks, albeit challenging, that they themselves could see as moving them in the direction of that lasting peace, even a fool's errand would have avoided the damage that they inflicted on that troubled land. If you're worried about your own ambition, pause a minute, especially if you're worried about risk and about failure. Well, then join the group. We all face it. If you're concerned that maybe you just don't have the critical leadership traits to be successful in the great game, maybe you're right, for now. But I'm here to tell you that all of what you need can be learned. It's the learning, the relentless attention to the small beginnings that will make all the difference. And those small things are often incredibly challenging.